So Sandy Munro, the vehicle researcher, teardown artist, uh, reverse engineerist, he is ripping apart a Model Y, him and his team at Munro and Associates, and they've already found some things that are just really awesome. Some are controversial, and others, they're going to take more time as they actually get down into analyzing each different bolt and the frame itself and things like that. But they discovered the new heat pump, which we knew existed, but he's got a little more insight into it, and he's even actually made some suggestions to the company, and they've already been addressed. So, like, one item is that the HVAC system, it's floating, so it would make less noise, but it's not encapsulated like the previous model was. So either this one, I think Tesla contacted him and said, yes, we're going to encapsulate that going forward. The change has already been made. And we find things like the rear bumper, or controversial things like he suggested that there's a retention bolt on the wheel that the enthusiasts are suggesting is actually only used during construction. I'm not very familiar on brakes, so I can't say one way or the other. But then the other thing is he suggested that the 7 seats are going to be rear-facing for the extra 2 seats. And in our prototypes that we saw, they were forward-facing. So that was a bit of controversy there. But everything else is like we're seeing stuff that like he likes what he sees. We like what we're hearing. Like they go into like how the high voltage cabling between the charge port and the battery, or the high voltage system in the battery penthouse is solid piping, so it doesn't have to. It can be done by a robot instead of a human. And he really loved the rear crush structure. And one item that they did was the rear tub underneath the floor in the back was changed to one piece of a plastic material instead of many pieces of steel and aluminum. So it was really cool. And they're all bite-sized. They're like 10 minutes or less. So if you get a few minutes,
yeah, especially the earlier ones are like 2 to 5 minutes, so easy to digest.
Yeah.
Easy to digest, or okay. I was going to say something snarky, and why? Why do I don't even. I just need to be quiet.
Now,
do they put the car back together when they're done with it, or just sell the parts?
They sell the report to both the manufacturer and the manufacturer's competitors.
Right.
And actually, they keep all the parts. They label them. They find out where they came from. They price them. And then the parts are used as examples for the next model to compare. Like they compare compressors from the Model 3 to the Model Y. They could show you the differences. They compared the suspension arms. They compare everything. So they must catalog them and store them for a period of time to keep the separate models available to come back to see where the changes have happened.
So I assume they just go out and buy a random car in the open market.
Worse, they buy them from a reseller.
Yeah, he said that they don't want to be identified to any auto manufacturer that they may be buying the car because they could receive a top-of-the-line car as opposed to what anyone can buy. So they instruct somebody to go out and buy it incognito, and then that car is resold to them as their model.
Yep.
Now, when they take it apart, are they violating the license agreement?
Oh, probably.
Oh, yeah.
But Tesla seems very supportive of this one, so at least in this count, he's good. And he said he spent an extra $20,000 on top of what the car already cost for this particular performance Model Y because of the middleman.
Okay.
Well, I kind of like the octo
valve.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I thought that was pretty cute. So I guess Tesla's okay with it. Obviously,
smart business, because if you're Audi or Ford, you're going to want this data. So instead of buying the car yourself, you just buy the report from these guys.
Yep. And then he's already given some free tips to Tesla that they've already implemented, like not just that cover, but like some of the stuff he said to do on the Model 3 is like he opens up, he's like, "Wow, I love this. This is exactly what I said to do."
And I mean, we've. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
No.
Well, no, I mean we've talked before how the car companies do this as well on their own, buy competitors' products, tear them apart to reverse engineer them to understand how they can improve their cars or steal ideas or whatever it is they do. This is common practice. I don't know of somebody else that does it like Munro does. I don't know if he's the only one or just the most prominent, but he's obviously all over the place doing this, and obviously if you're doing it with Teslas, you've got lots of eyeballs on what's going on because everybody wants to know.
Yeah, and the beauty of buying this from somebody else than just your in-house engineers is you can see from a different perspective. You can see stuff that you missed, and it's always good to have that extra team looking at it. So you basically get a second teardown for a lot less investment in labor and buying a vehicle, or as we saw a couple years ago with the German companies abusing a vehicle that belongs to a private party.
The rental, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of feel like I like all the videos and I think it's pretty cool and everything, but I'm worried about people who play them while their kids are at home and then leave the Tesla and the tools unattended for a little while because somebody's 8-year-old.
That would so be me.
Me too. I was always taking stuff apart.
Especially with all these poor kids at home right now.
Yeah.
Right?
So keep these videos away from your children.
Nice. Well, thank you for that, Kacey. It'll be interesting to see as Sandy digs into things like Octovalve. Paul, you know what? I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask Paul one question, and I'm sure Kacey and Mark and John or whoever in Georgia can all chime in. But one of the things that brought up is this new HVAC system that, for the first time, at least as Munro presented it, not only it doesn't have separate systems for cooling batteries or the engines or, in this case, the electric motors and the interior cabin. There's one system that does all of these things. And obviously, you decrease parts, you decrease redundancy, it's easier to manufacture. But if you have a failure, if your air conditioning goes out, for instance, all of a sudden your battery thermal management goes out. Any opinions on that? Technically inclined?
I mean, it makes sense to make it simpler. And heat pumps are really efficient compared to having especially an electric car where you don't have an ICE to get heat from. So it's basically you run the air conditioner backwards and it makes a heater. And they can transport, they can take the heat from the battery in the winter and maybe put it in the passenger cabin. And I haven't watched any of the videos. I haven't studied the Model Y that much, but I assume the Octovalve or whatever it's called helps distribute all the heating and cooling where it needs to go. Now, if that piece breaks, you're probably dead on the road, but hopefully they engineered it so it won't break very easily.
Yeah. Plus, when you have less pieces, you can use that money that you save to you can maybe use half of the savings to get a more reliable part, and then put the rest of the savings in your pocket.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we talked about this in the past with other car manufacturers, that some of them have their own little walled gardens. I control HVAC, I control this, I control radiator, I control heating. Like, they all have these special services they do, and they don't communicate with each other. So you end up with a car that has a couple of radiators. You end up with a car that has a couple of different fluid bottles that contain the same fluid. It's just for different systems. Yeah. And with Tesla forcing everyone to work together, they build a solution that fixes all the three problems and allows you to have a single source. And I think that's certainly the wiser way to go. I've seen many cars where you've lifted the hood and you go, why is there 3 separate fill-up reservoirs for the same fluid? And it's because they have these different. Yeah, they have these different people that work in different areas and don't talk to each other. Yeah. And that's the
engine
problem.
Cooling guy doesn't talk to the hybrid inverter cooling guy, and
yeah. Especially like you said, though, some of them actually run at the same temperature, same pressure, everything.
Yeah.
But I liked the way that when Third Row was interviewing Elon, and he said, why do we have a battery module group, or why do we have battery modules? Why don't we just have a flat pack? And he said it's the organization and the product tend to mirror each other, and so we only have modules because we have a module team. So if I merge the module team back into the bigger organization, we'll still have cells, but we won't necessarily have a module casing and so a can within a can situation, which is a good way to look at it.
All this said, and this does not meant to refute what everyone has said here in the last couple of minutes, but redundancy in mechanical systems, while redundant and costs more, is also safer, right?
Right.
I mean, there's a reason we do that. In some areas, I'm not, again, not a blanket argument against this. Just let's see how this plays out. Let's see how Octovalve works before we laud it as the inevitable path that everyone needs to follow.
Well, this is what I liked about. I don't know if we're going to see that in this vehicle or if it's not going to happen until the next one, because they did pull Elon back from the cliff. The patents that we were seeing for Model Y, it literally only had 2 wiring harnesses. It had the main one going down the driver's side and then the backup one going down the passenger side. So that way, if something took out your driver's side rocker panels all the way through to the inside of the body, you didn't lose braking, you didn't lose high voltage. It was a great idea.
Not losing braking is a really good idea.
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing. Pretty much every car has some kind of redundant braking system that's been around since
Should
the
be
60s.
3, right? Yeah.
Is it because it's a good thing to do, or is it because it's required by law, or both?
Both.
Probably both.
But it started required by law.
Yeah.
In the early 60s, cars had one brake master cylinder, and if you lost brake pressure, you lost all your brakes. And then they went to a dual chamber system that at least you use 2 of the wheels and have 2 left, and the e-brake. And on like even a Prius from 2004 has a battery backup capacitor box to provide power to brake the car if the 12-volt battery craps out. So,
Or you accidentally turned it off.
all these companies have redundancy built in
Yeah.
for brakes.
And then even the airbags have 2 igniters in most of the airbag systems. You get the low and the high, so you might not get the best inflation, but you will get an inflation.
And inflation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Assuming it's not shooting shotgun shrapnel at your face.
I mean, the one thing that scares me a bit about the Octo valve is it says "Made in China" on it.
Oh, that was another cool part. It said "Made in China" on one part and "Made in Mexico" on another part of the.
Where does it come from? No one knows.
Well, I mean, globalization, right? Your car parts, you can have the same. It's the same with the Prius, right? You can have the same car, and it depends where it's assembled, or the Corolla, for example.
And it's for something that's that critical to the car's health. I'm sure they really spent time engineering that component, and they over-engineered it, outlast the life of the car. But time will tell.
The battery is very massive, so it's got a certain amount of ability to retain heat and cool to it. So if you just immediately, if you've lost the pump and you immediately cut your performance way down, you can have a limp home or limp to the side of the road situation as well.
I was going to say it's Tesla. They, their software, they'll deal with it if in the unlikely event it fails, right? They can have the software.
Dispatch AAA with your GPS to come and get you before you.
But I mean, even within the car, it's self-sustainable. I'm sure they'll let you drive home, right?
Yeah. Well, like
they're able.
Yeah, we can see that today on the dual motor cars. It used to be if your rear motor went out, the car would be dead in the water, and they, for the most part, they just did it through software where the car will just ignore that the rear motor is missing. I think there is a hardware cutoff where they weren't able to do that. Where if your rear motor goes out, your car is still gone, even though you have an extra. But they even pushed it back further to the point where I'm not sure if there are any cars left that there's a hardware failure that stops them. But they extended it so that you can just turn on the front motor and make your way home.
Mm-hmm.
Or to safety, not necessarily to home, because that could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a good thing going forward, right? Like it's a good push for dual motors for electric cars going into the future. Especially, well, never mind.
Oh, I've got another example. The AC broke on my car 4 times, and the battery couldn't cool itself, so I couldn't supercharge, and I couldn't. Once the temperature got up, I couldn't have air conditioner, so like the fans would kick off, and but it didn't stop me from driving. It's like, yeah, I might not charge when you get where you're going, but at least you got somewhere. Turned out to be a combo of a software failure and an unreproducible glitch, and so
It was the quad valve, not the octo.
this is the quad valve, exactly.
The
They
early
upgrade.
version.